So this is a compilation of videos from Instagram released in December 2016 on whether software is broken or not and how to break it. So that's about 6 minutes on broken stuff. So do we break software? Of course we don't. But we have to say that, otherwise we get thrown out of the testing club. Because that's not a word that we use in polite society. The thing is, I still find it a useful word, right? It's like a magic word. It puts me in a state where I'm transported to a world where software might break. And it might be possible for me to put in input that causes it to self-destruct. And I'm going to pull this software apart and push it and feed data in and twist it and see if it still processes and functions. So whilst we don't break it, whilst everything that it does, even if it terminates abnormally with an exception, we programmed it to do that. It's not a word we use in polite society, but it's a word that I use because I find it useful to put me in a state where I will test in a certain way that is valuable and provides useful negative information for the project. I just remembered I had one of these when I was younger. I think it's called Big Jim. I don't remember much about it. I just remember, I think at Christmas, I got this toy that could karate chop, and it wore pants. And it could karate chop into a board, and I had trouble putting the board together, so my dad helped me. He put the board up, then he showed how you squeeze the little man on the side and he karate chops and the board breaks. And I was howling, "You've broken my toy!" Because if anyone's going to break something, it was going to be me. So if break is a bad word, a negative word, and people take offence at it, then these must be terrible books, right? Did the authors not understand that people have feelings? I mean, were they being deliberately provocative for marketing purposes? Right, maybe. Would they do that? Would James Whittaker be deliberately provocative for marketing purposes? And maybe they thought it was funny, right? Who knows? I don't know. But I mean, these books take the view that software has faults in it. And what we're going to do is we're going to work back from those faults to create tactics that will help us find them. And they called those tactics attacks. Right? And people don't seem to take offense at that word, which I find interesting. But I think the books help build up an attitude that the current politically correct world of testing keeps trying to stem, unfortunately. The books are out of date, but they're really good to generalize from and study. So assuming that you can overcome your revulsion to the titles, I'm going to show you what you can do with these books. These books are out of date. The technologies that are in here are out of date. A lot of the approaches in terms of how you implement them are out of date, but the actual tactics are fairly good. Now, when I look through the pages here, I can see I've got a whole bunch of notes in here, because what I did is I created a whole bunch of mind maps. I wrote down the basic points. I generalized from those points so I could then apply the attacks and tactics and the different approaches and the thought processes to other ways, other types of software. So I had to figure out how to implement the edit and source code type attacks in the break web software and web security stuff. Had to look at different ways of interpreting traffic. What we do is we go through, look for the general principles, mind map them, and look for modern implementations of them. I'm not convinced that being negative is a good reason to not use a word. So I'm not sure we should not use break because it is negative. I don't think that's a good reason. I think a good reason for not using a word is because it's vague and ambiguous. So if we're not allowed to use the word break, then we're probably not allowed to use words like fix a defect, because the system isn't broken in the first place. We're not allowed to say with things like working, because the system is always working, right? Even when it messes up massively and aborts and interrupts, it's always working, it's always doing what it's coded for. What we probably want to do is take this as a hint to look at our language and change our language to be as accurate and as intended as we possibly can, to make it as explicit. So we need to get in the habit, to break the habit of using words like working and fix and breaking, and concentrate on saying things as explicitly and accurately as possible. So unfortunately, sometimes the information we provide is negative. I mean, that time that we used the software to create a file that it wrote to the disk but then couldn't read again without crashing. And the time when we input specific data into the IE search URL and IE imploded and looked like one of those infinite mirror systems and the page just rendered infinitely. It was super cool, but someone coded it to do that. We can't imagine how they could possibly have coded it to do that, but they coded it to do that. Now, the problem is that someone can code the system to terminate abnormally. We didn't specify that. They didn't tell anyone. What we did is we didn't break it, but we discovered additional information about how the system works as coded. Yeah, it's broken, but it's built to be broken. So the system is always doing what the code tells it to. The system and its behavior represent reality. Not what we think it should do, but reality, what it actually does. And when we test, we have to decide how much of our testing reinforces our models or our beliefs about the software, and how much of it actually really dives deep and tries to expose the reality of the software and how it behaves.